Good morning, and welcome to the Salem Lutheran Church Sunday morning Bible study. We'll be getting started in just a few moments. If you'd like to join in on the discussion, please join us by going to slcw.org and clicking the link to join the group. We'll be starting in just a few moments.
Well, good morning, and welcome to our Bible study here at Salem Lutheran Church. If you'd like to turn in your Bibles to Psalm 128, that's the psalm that we're going to be discussing today. And Psalm 128 is kind of interesting because it actually brings up one of the old arguments that have been running through the Christian church for decades, maybe centuries. And that is, what is more important, faith or works? And so we're going to sort of wrestle with that question a little bit today. Anyways, I'm going to read from my introduction here, and it says, this psalm is titled A Song of Ascent. And remember, the songs of ascent were psalms that were sung by travelers as they made their way to Jerusalem. And it says here, it is another of the 15 songs sung by the travelers on their way to Jerusalem, usually for one of the 3 yearly feasts. And those 3 yearly feasts, again, were Passover, Pentecost, and Tabernacles. So the 3 high festivals for Jews was Passover, which I think you all know, that was the celebration of their deliverance from Egypt. Pentecost happens 50 days after Passover. And that's what Christians, everybody thinks Pentecost is a Christian festival. No, it's a festival we stole from the Jews. If you remember the story, what would happen is Jews who were traveling to Jerusalem for the Passover would not just come for Passover and then leave. They would stay until Pentecost, 50 days later, and then they would return home. That was sort of their traveling day, the day they would pack up and start heading home. And it was on that day, if you remember in our New Testament, that the angel or the Holy Spirit descended upon the disciples, and the tongues of fire appeared on their heads, and etc. Well, we celebrate that Pentecost, but that was really a Jewish festival. Pentecost, 50 days after Passover. And Tabernacles is actually a harvest festival. Tabernacles refers to the little outbuildings that the Jews would build when they had the harvest time. Farmers in those days were a lot different than they are today. Today, farmers live on their land, but in those days, farmers lived in the city and they had their fields outside of the city. And so they would have to go out of the city, out to the fields to work them. And when the harvest came, well, they didn't want to waste time traveling back and forth, so they would build little outbuildings where they would stay overnight while they were harvesting their crops. And those little outbuildings are called tabernacles. And so that's where the festival gets its name. It's a harvest festival. And I'm going to read just some more from my commentary. It says, it is of real significance that these songs of home and of true civic consciousness are found among those which are sung on the way that leads to worship. It is ever good to carry into the place of our communion with God the interest of home and city. It is only by doing so that we can influence these for their lasting good. So we're going to talk about that, how to be a Christian means to exercise one's faith in one's community. And the psalm begins by saying, blessed is everyone who fears the Lord. Well, there's 3 things to notice there. First of all, the word Lord again. That word in Hebrew is Yahweh, and it refers to the covenant God, the God who consecrated the people of Israel and made them his people. It was the God who promised the people of Israel that he would be their God and they would be his people. So that's the Lord is always the word that is used in connection with the covenant. And I'm going to repeat myself once again by telling you that comes from the name that God chose for himself. If you remember the story of Moses at the burning bush, Moses was called by God to go down to Egypt and to get his people out. And Moses did not want to go. And he kept coming up with excuse after excuse. And finally, towards the end of their argument or discussion, Moses says, well, when I get down there, who shall I say has sent me? Because there were hundreds of gods at that time throughout the ancient world. And so he says, well, when I get down there, which God shall I say has sent me? And the burning bush voice comes and says, tell them Yahweh, the one who is, the one who was, and the one who ever will be, Yahweh. So Yahweh is always associated with this covenant God, the God who made his covenant with the people of Israel at Mount Sinai and promised that he would be their God and they would always be his people. The other thing this verse mentions is fears the Lord. And that word is always misunderstood, I think, by modern people. It's a bad translation. For us, fear means, oh, I'm scared. Ooh, fear. No, that's not what the word fear means. The word fear means to honor God, to respect God. So blessed is everyone who honors God. And also, the third thing to notice in this first verse is it says, blessed is everyone. It doesn't say, blessed are the Jews, blessed are the Israelites. It says, blessed is everyone. So that refers to everyone in the world. Everyone who honors and respects the Lord. Blessed is that person. Blessed is everyone who walks and fears the Lord, who walks and honors and respects God. And then it goes on to say, who walks in his ways. Who walks in his ways. This explains what the psalmist meant by the fear of the Lord. It wasn't fundamentally a matter of having certain feelings towards God. Oh, I love God. No. It's a matter of a life of obedience. And that gets us into that discussion of what is more important. And Lutherans have always been ones who always emphasize by faith alone. We are saved by faith. We always refer to the three solas: sola gratia, sola fide, sola scriptura. We are saved by grace, by faith, and by scripture alone. But that's a little misunderstanding. I think that even though Lutherans believe faith is important, that ultimately it's our faith and acceptance of Jesus Christ that puts us in good graces with God. But if you read on in the book of James, for instance, James talks a lot about the idea of good works. Yeah, good works don't save, but good works are the demonstration of our faith. James was the one who said, some will tell you, I'll show you my faith. And James responds by saying, I'll show you my works, and in my works you will see my faith. So it's not enough to say, I'm a Christian. It's not enough to go to church every Sunday. You must demonstrate your faith and relationship to God, your respect and your honor for God by the way in which you live your lives, by the way in which you live your lives out in your family, by the way in which you live your lives out in your community. It means that as a Christian, it's not enough to say, I'm a Christian and go to church, but you must stand up for your faith. And sometimes that means standing up against evil. And in our world, so often that Christians have failed that test. We could go through all the works of history and give demonstration of that. The one that always comes to my mind because of my Jewish background is how right before World War II, there were a lot of Jews who got on ships and tried to escape Germany because they could see the Holocaust coming. And when one ship came to the United States, we refused to let them land. We forced them to go back to Germany, where they were all arrested by the Gestapo and put into concentration camps, and many of them died. It's not enough to say I am a Christian. One must live one's life out as a Christian. And I so often as a pastor, my frustration was that I did not see people sometimes demonstrating their faith in the way in which they lived out their life and the way in which they did their works. That's what's important. It's important that one not only profess to be a Christian, but that in every day you ask yourself, what would Jesus do? What would Jesus do in this place? What would Jesus do if he were here? What would Jesus say if he were here? Would he stand back idly and watch evil have its day, or would he stand up? Now, that doesn't mean if you stand up for evil, stand up against evil, that you're always going to win. Sometimes Christians throughout the centuries have been martyred for their Christian faith. And we could give story after story after story of Christians who have stood up and lived out their faith, and it has cost them their life. Sometimes that will happen. Sometimes standing up as a Christian and doing the right thing will mean that you will have to forfeit things like your life, your reputation, maybe your jobs, maybe the respect of friends, but you have to do what is right. I've always said that one of the big problems with gossip is that we fail to stand up against it. I know a lot of times you're sitting in a group and people start talking about somebody who's not there, and we know it's wrong, but do we stand up? Do we stand up and let our voice be heard? Do we stand up and say this is wrong? We should only speak well of people? No, sometimes we back off and don't do it because, well, we're afraid of what our friends will say. We're afraid it will cost us our friendships. And so we remain silent. When we see evil, we need to stand up against it. I always remember the saying that evil wins not because it is stronger or better, but because good people remain silent. So, as a Christian, when you see something that is wrong, when you see something that is not right, it is important that you stand up and walk in the ways of God. You walk in the path of Jesus. The disciples did that, and it cost them their lives. Jesus did that, and it cost him his life. And throughout centuries, Christians who have stood up for their faith, who have lived out their faith in their actions, in their lives, sometimes it has cost them their lives. But it still is important that we walk in the way of the Lord. And that's what this psalm starts out. Blessed is everyone who fears the Lord and who walks in his ways. Not just fear the Lord, not just demonstrate and say, I have faith, but then to demonstrate that faith every day of our life in the works, in the way in which we live our life, in the things we say, in the things we don't say, in the things we do, and in the things we don't do. That is what this psalm talks about. Blessed is everyone who fears, who respects, who honors God. And how do we respect God? By walking in his ways, in his ways. And then the blessings that we receive from God are described further in this psalm. In verses 2 and 3, it says, when you eat the labor of your hands, you shall be happy, and it shall be well with you. Your wife shall be like a fruitful vine. In the very heart of your house, your children like olive plants all around your table. Interesting picture it draws for us. What are the blessings? Well, remember, first of all, that people who wrote this psalm and are singing this psalm on their way to Jerusalem were primarily agrarian. They were farmers. And so what the psalm is saying is that the man who walks in God's ways, well, his labors will be of his hands will be rewarded. He will have a good harvest. A hardworking farmer will enjoy the food of his own work. So an element of work is always what is important here. So it's saying that if you walk in the way of the Lord, if you have faith, if you respect and honor God, and you walk in his ways, one of the ways in which God will reward you will be with a fruitful harvest. That the work of your hands will be blessed. Your farmland will yield a bountiful harvest, and you will be able to feed yourself and your family. And then it goes on to talk again. Remember, we mentioned about the emphasis on family last time, and we see that the psalmist believes that one of the blessings of this is a family. Your wife shall be like a fruitful vine. One who fears the Lord will be blessed with a large and happy home. Children are a blessing that God gives to us. I know a lot of times as parents, we may sit back and think, hey, I'm not sure about that sometimes, but they are. You know, I have two wonderful children, and they are a blessing to me. I'm happy for them and for their success in life, but I'm more happy about, they're both very successful. I have a daughter, as I've mentioned before, who's a doctor. I have a son who's an attorney. He works for Lockheed Martin. My daughter is a associate professor of neuroradiology at Emory School of Medicine. Both very successful, but what was more important to me is the kind of people they are. And as I look at my grandchildren, I see just exactly what my daughter has done. Bella and Alex, I just had a conversation with my daughter yesterday. They were taking their two children down to the National Museum of Art in Washington, D.C., so they could see all these pictures. And then she sent me pictures of them standing in front of Monet's and Van Gogh's and Da Vinci. And The children are growing up well. They're happy, always smiling, always happy, well adjusted, doing well in school. She's done a good job. She's a good mother. And that makes me feel good because as a father, I sit back and think, maybe I wasn't always the best father in the world. Things I could have done better, things I could have done differently. But then I look at those two kids and I say, well, I must have done something right because they turned out okay. And I see my grandchildren who are products of that, and they're turning out really, really well. They're happy, they're content, and my daughter, I think, is steering those two kids to a successful and happy life. So a happy home with good children, that is a blessing from God. How does God bless his faithful? He gives them a happy home, a happy family life, husband and wife who are happy. That is a blessing. And I think also about my own wife when I read that. She was a good wife for a lot of years before she was called home to the Lord. And she did a good job raising the kids. Have to give her more credit than myself. She was always very close with the kids. And that was a blessing that God gave to me. He gave me a good and faithful wife. He's given me two great children, four grandchildren that are just wonderful. 3 girls and 1 boy I have, by the way. Savannah, Sierra, Isabella, and I finally got a boy, Alexander. So that is it. And it says the children goes on to talk about how they will, what the blessings are, like a fruitful vine, like olive plants. Those were the 2 most important crops for the Israelites, growing grapes so they could produce wine, and olive plants so they could produce olive oil, which was a very important commodity to the Israelites. And he says, if you are faithful to the Lord, you'll be like those vines in your farmland. You'll be like those olive plants, those olive trees in your farmland. You will produce bounty because God will bless the work of your hands, and you will have great grapes and great wine and great olive oil, and it'll be just wonderful. I remember talking about, I don't know why I just thought of this, but I remember when I was in Greece years ago with my daughter, and we got a chance to see how they harvest olives. And it was kind of interesting because what they do is they spread cloth around the base of the tree, and then they basically shake the trees. So the olives will fall off and onto the cloth, and then they gather the cloths together and take them to the olive presses where they press their olive oil. So God is saying in this psalm that if you are faithful, if you fear the Lord, God will bless you. And one of the ways he blesses you is with a good family, a good husband, a good wife, good children who will grow like olive plants and grow like vines, and you will produce great olive oil and great grapes. And then the promise is repeated again. It says, blessed, thus shall the man be blessed who fears the Lord. The man who fears the Lord, who respects the Lord, who walks in the way of the Lord, he will be blessed by God. He will be blessed by God. And those blessings, again, are the family primarily. God doesn't promise us that we'll have material success or wealth or power, but he says you'll be happy. And what more could you ask for? To be a happy family, a happy husband, a happy wife, happy children, good family. Those are the blessings that God gives. Behold, thus shall the man be blessed who fears the Lord. And then it talks towards the end about blessings connected with Jerusalem. The Lord will bless you out of Zion, and may you see the good of Jerusalem all the days of your life. Bless you out of Zion. Zion was the seat of God. You have to remember, for Jews, Jerusalem was where God lived, not just figuratively in their mind. Literally, God lived in Jerusalem. And specifically, he lived in the temple, on Temple Mount, on Mount Zion. That's Mount Zion. That was the name of the mountain, the plateau in the middle of Jerusalem, on which was sat first the tabernacle and then the temple of God. And specifically, God dwelt in what is called the Holy of Holies in the temple. As you approach the temple, you would go up into the first part of the building, which was called the Holy Place. And then you went to the very center, which was called the Holy of Holies. And that was where the Ark of the Covenant stood. And for Israelites, the Ark of the Covenant was where God dwelt. And so what this psalm is saying is, out of Zion, out of the temple, out of Mount Zion, God's blessings will radiate like rays of the sun, and they will bless you. Out of the Lord will bless you out of Zion, and you will see the good of Jerusalem all the days of your life. That the blessings of God, the presence of God will be with you now and forever. What a blessing. What a blessing. And not just for part of your life, but all of your life. So God is reiterating the promise he made to the Israelites at Mount Sinai, that I will be your God and you will be my people. I'm just reading some of my notes here. My notes say, but may you see the good of Jerusalem. For the one who fears the Lord, it is a blessing for him to see the good of Jerusalem. It shows that there is a sense in which a happy home is not enough. We must also have care for our community and for our nation. And so it's saying that a happy home has to be demonstrated in the way in which we react to people around us. It's not enough, the psalmist is saying, to care for your family. That's important, but it's not enough. We must also extend our care and treat all of our community, our nation, as part of our family. And when one of our community hurts, all of us hurt. When one part of our nation hurts, all of our nation hurts. All of us hurt. Our fellow man is our responsibility. We have a responsibility to those around us, whether that means helping somebody who is next door, or somebody who is far away in your community, or maybe in another state, or maybe in another city. We have a care for those people because they are our family. Our family isn't just our nuclear family, not just our children and our parents. No, it is all of mankind is our family. And when one part of our family hurts, all of us hurt. When one part of our family is being attacked, we are all being attacked. And so the psalmist is telling us that it's not enough for us to take care of our family. We must take care of our communities, our nation. And in a small way, I can talk about that. I have this one guy who lives 2 doors down from me. Wonderful, wonderful family. I first met them in an interesting way. I was out walking one day with my dog. This was probably a couple of years ago. And I tripped and fell in their driveway. And I have a bad back, and so I couldn't get up, to be very honest. And they saw me out there, and they came both running out of the house, helped me up, helped me get back into my walker, and made my way back home. That's doing your community. But they've done more than that. I know we had this big snowstorm last weekend, and I was buried under 12 inches of snow, like everyone. My driveway, my sidewalks were just filled with snow. And that Sunday evening, I was sitting in my house wondering who can I contact to get my snow taken care of. And all of a sudden, I heard these snow blowers, and I thought, well, one of my neighbors must be blowing out his driveway or something. And I looked out my window, and here this guy had come down from his house 2 doors down, plowed all the way through the sidewalk to get to my driveway, and was plowing out my driveway. And then later on, when the plows came down and they pushed a 3-foot mound across my driveway, him and his son came back down with shovels and dug out that so I could get out of my house. And when I tried to pay him, he said, no. He says, no, you don't have to pay me. He says, I just hope that my mom and dad, wherever they are, if they're dug in, there's somebody there who will help them out. So I'm helping you out like I would hope somebody would help my parents. That is taking care of your community. That is living out your faith. And I keep saying the psalm is talking about how all people in our community, all people in our nation, all people in our world, when they hurt, we hurt, because we are all part of the family of man. And God says we are responsible for all people. And so the psalm then ends, and I'm almost out of time. It ends with, yes, may you see your children's children, and peace upon Israel. May you see your children's children. I've been fortunate enough that I've lived long enough to see my children's children. I've seen my grandchildren. I'll never see my great-grandchildren. I don't think I'll live that long. Uh, I just thought of something funny, but I'm not going to tell you.
Thank
Well,
you.
I guess I will. My daughter, every time I talk about how old I am, my daughter always says, "Oh, Dad, you're going to live to be 90 or 100." And I always respond by saying, "Nah, even God doesn't hate me that much." I'm 80 years old. I've had a good life. I've had a good wife. I've had wonderful children. I've been very happy in my life. I've had a lot of good experiences. I'm ready. I'm ready for the final adventure. So if God
Not
decides,
this weekend.
pardon?
Not this weekend, right?
Not this weekend, I don't think.
Okay,
I think
good,
I'm
good.
going to last a few
Just
more
checking.
days. I'm ready to go home and see my wife. Besides, I think God is probably tired of dealing with her. Uh, he wants me to come and take her off his hands. So the psalm ends with that. Yes, may you see your children's children and peace upon Israel. The psalm ends with this happy and confident declaration. The psalmist understood that if the people of Israel did fear the Lord, the blessings of shalom. By the way, if you've ever heard that word shalom and wonder what it means, it's always used as a greeting or as a farewell. When you meet somebody, you always say shalom. And when you say goodbye as a Jew, you say shalom. Shalom actually means peace. Peace be with you. And so that's how the psalm ends. The blessings of peace will be evident if you live out your faith as a child of God. If you see your whole community, your nation, your world as your family, then and bring peace to that world, then you will find peace in your own life. And that's how the psalm ends. And I'm done. Tim, what's going on at Salem?
Pastor, first, before we get started on the announcements of what's going on here at Salem, I want to ask you a question. If maybe I got this right or got this wrong, but I've heard that the word Salem is a old German word that means peace.
Yeah.
Okay, so
Yes.
basically,
It actually means a place of peace. Like it means sort of like a what do they call those water holes in the desert?
Oasis.
Yeah, Salem means like an oasis in the midst of a desert.
Really?
Yeah, a peaceful place in the middle of the desert.
Well, we've talked about having an Oasis ministry here at Salem. How ironic that we didn't realize Salem stood for Oasis. Anyway, all right, the announcements for today are short. We do have a Salem Lutheran Church Sunday morning worship at 10 a.m. here in the sanctuary. If you'd like to join us here in person, we'd love to have you. And if you want to be able to watch it on live stream, we are live streaming it on Facebook. We also replay that live stream at 5 o'clock in the evening on YouTube. So if you're interested in watching that there, you can do so just like you would if you watched it live stream this morning. Also, I did a little bit of work and downloaded the first 4 episodes of Pastor Nathan's Psalmody or Psalm studies and posted those on YouTube as well. So if you wanted to catch up a little bit, you can go back all the way to the first week of January and watch an episode of the Bible study that you watched this morning. And I'm going to be trying to keep up with that so that we maintain Pastor Nathan's Bible studies on YouTube as well. So join us for those and watch as many times as you like so Pastor Nathan can get a whole bunch more views and he'll be able to win one of these victory or win one of these contests eventually. The other things that are going on today, 12 noon, council meeting happened.
Hi, Simone.
What's that?
I said hi to Simone.
Oh, Simone's here. Yes, thank you very much. So we have, council meeting at noon. And tomorrow we have, starting at 6 o'clock, the NFL Monday night. It starts with the meal at 6 o'clock. That's the nourishment and fellowship. And then the fellowship and learning continues with watching of an episode of the Chosen series. And then we break whenever we're done with that discussion. So join us on Monday nights for that event. Now, coming up in the month of February, the middle of February is the beginning of Lent. And we hope to have some form of a Bible study or a program that will be available via Zoom. It won't be live streamed, I don't believe, because we'll be dealing with some copyrighted material. But we're going to be looking at something related to the Bible within a Zoom Bible study. So join us on Wednesday nights as we enter the middle of February, starting on Ash Wednesday,
well, not starting on Ash Wednesday. Lent starts on Ash Wednesday, which we will have a Wednesday night worship imposition of ashes service here at Salem on that Wednesday, which I believe is February 18th. Following that, every Wednesday following that until Easter or until Holy Week, we'll be doing that Bible study via Zoom. So you join that the same way you join the Sunday morning Bible study, clicking that link on our slcw.org page that says click here to join group. We have sub sales that are going on, and the day for the turn-in was actually yesterday. But because we didn't have church last Sunday, we didn't have anybody really have access to the actual order forms, but we have those here in the narthex today. Come fill out your order form for the sub sale. Subs will be ready for pickup following worship next Sunday. These are our Super Bowl sub sales. They cost $6, and you can select whatever items that you want on them, and we will make them for you. The money and the proceeds from this sale go to help replenish the investment money we removed to pay for our new sanctuary roof. So please help us with that as we continue to move toward paying that debt off. I believe those are all the announcements we have. Is there anything else that you have, Pastor?
Well, just one thing. I did look up the word Salem, and it's always nice when I find out that I was right. The word Salem comes from the word shalom, and specifically the word Salem means a place of peace or a place of safety.
Wow.
That's awesome. That would describe Salem.
It would. Hey, Pastor Nathan, it's Simone. I just want to tell you how much I truly enjoy when you go over the Old Testament like that. As Tim will probably chuckle, I use an old King James Version, Schofield version, and it has a lot of those explanations. So,
Well, thank you.
I always
Appreciate that.
enjoy that. Yeah.
Yeah, you may want to take a look at some other translations. I think they're a lot easier to understand. One of my favorites is the New English Bible, which is translated about 50 years ago. And it still has a lot of that King James feel to it, but in a more modern English. May want to just take a look at it.
Appreciate that. I don't mind the these and those and these and so.
He loves the theses.
And who liveth and reigneth
I don't
and
care,
peeth
but
and-
yeah.
I always remember that the prayers of the church used to always end with "who liveth and reigneth." And I remember one time I got caught into a cycle, and I had the prayer. And I said, "Who liveth and reigneth with theeth and the Holy Ghost." I couldn't stop the dust at the end.
I know people do that all the time. You don't have to put a TH on everything. That's because
Yes,
Well,
Pastor
anyways, we gotta let
Judith,
you all go. I gotta get up to church. So we hope you all have a great day. Hope you all were safe during the storm. Hope you find God's shalom, God's peace in your life. And keep smiling until we all meet again next week. God's
you
blessings.
as well. Bye.
Thank you, Pastor.
Thank you, Pastor. Good to see
Bye,
you, Simone.
Barb. It was good to
Bye.
see you, honey. I'll try to get there. Life. That's all I can
Oh.
say.
All right. Good to see you.
Good to see you, dear. Bye-bye. Bye, Tim.
Bye.
Bye.
Bye.